Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Helen Campbell-Pickford. I'm the Teaching Director for PGTs in Dev, and I also work on the work placement module, various modules connected with education and globalisation and so on. And I am delighted today to introduce Asra, who is in fact an ex-student of mine. Asra was on the Masters in International Development Management. She was the last year when it was international before we went global. And she did her DWP, her work placement, with a consultancy called Aleph Strategies. And that's really what she's going to focus on today. So she's a Dev graduate and very much in touch with Dev and what we're doing at the moment. She's worked with a whole list of organisations since she started at Aleph, including the Danish Refugee Council, and I've got the list here, African Development Bank, Transparency International, the British Council, looking at reporting from the Rockefeller Trust Fund, all kinds of amazing stuff. So what we're going to do is Asra's just going to talk a bit about her work with Aleph, and then we will have the usual question and answer session when you're very, very welcome to either come on the microphone if you can, or type your question in the chat bar, and we'll have a look at that. I hope we can have a good discussion. So welcome, Asra.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Helen, and thank you to everybody who has been able to join us today. It is such a pleasure for me to be, even if it's virtually, to be back at the University of East Anglia. I think it has certainly been a place that really played a pivotal role in guiding me towards a career that I very much appreciate now, and I am very much enjoying that. And there were so many things that I learned at UEA which are really directly helping me at my current role. So just to add to what Helen said, I am a project manager at Aleph Strategies, which is a consulting firm, and we're based in both the UK and France, basically registered in both the countries. And it is a bit unusual in a way that it is in fact a for-profit consulting company, something that you don't traditionally find in the sector, because the assumption is that the work is very much not for profit. That is not to say that the work we do is not impactful or it is not trying to contribute to the development goals that we prioritize. It is very much about that. So Aleph Strategy. So what do we do at Aleph? We do a bit of research, a bit of evaluation. We also do strategy development. We also conduct and lead a capitalization exercises for various clients. And we're what we can call a generalist. So we work on several thematic areas, some of which are culture and heritage. We work on media development. We also work very much on the cross-sectoral areas like youth and gender. We do a lot of work in the migration sector as well. And we also do anti-corruption evaluations, for example. The list is quite long here, but I think the one thing that I want to emphasize is that we are certainly what we can call generalists. I think the specialty really here is about research and evaluation in itself. So that's a bit about Aleph Strategies. Like Helen mentioned, I was very, very lucky to be given this opportunity to do my work placement as part of my master's at the UEA. So I did a 3-month placement starting right in the mid of the spring semester, which was March of 2023. And that went on about until June of 2023. And that's when they decided that, okay, well, they've enjoyed working with me, and I got really lucky that I got then offered a full-time contract with the company, which was very exciting. Um, of course, I have been in your shoes, and this is such a typical thing to say, but this is in fact very true. Before joining my placement, I didn't know that evaluation will be something that I will enjoy so much. It's not that I didn't know about evaluation before I started my master's at UEA, but it is in fact at the UEA where I remember taking courses like welfare and evaluation, for example, where I really tangibly learned a lot about the theories that I'm now practically applying in my work. But maybe we will cover that bit in some of the questions that might come up in the rest of the session. But yeah, so generally, when I was studying for my master's in international development management, it was through that experience that I developed a deep interest in this field, which we call MNE. And at its core, MNE is, of course, about understanding what works and what doesn't, simply put, and how we can do better in terms of programming. Now, of course, I'm imagining that you're all taking the core courses like development perspectives, like potentially project design management, and maybe other specific ones. If you are doing education or gender, you're studying about different development challenges. So MNE is really all about taking a step back and looking at what is the impact after all, and who is defining what the impact can look like, because there are so many stakeholders involved in different development programming that defining success of an intervention also is a task of its own. Right. So yeah, I think the transition, I would say, from the classroom to consulting wasn't always straightforward. Of course, there were moments of uncertainty, learning curves, and also a lot of growth. But the idea is that as someone who is interested in consulting, you really just have to be open to everything that is being thrown at you. And there will be times when you will be really pushed to the deep end, and it will be scary, but it's something that will certainly be exciting as well, because you will know what impact looks like when you are diving deep into specific projects that you're evaluating. So yeah, so in terms of what my academic background was at UEA, so I took modules like development perspectives. I did with Helen education policy and practice. I also did welfare and evaluation, and I also did gender diversity course. So I took a variety of courses because deep down I feel like I probably already knew that I was going to be a generalist. For me, what mattered was that I really wanted to make sure that my skills are sharp as much as they can be. Because when you have strong M&E skills, and I'll get to it, I'll get to explaining what it really means, that's when you can really just apply it across different sectors. It really helps you be adaptive once you know exactly what the skills are. But beyond the coursework, I was able to develop analytical skills, of course, with the essays that we write, with the projects that we co-design with our group mates. And we also get a chance to develop our ability to think critically, and also the discipline to understand complex projects that exist around us. And one particularly formative experience, of course, in itself was my placement, like Helen mentioned and I mentioned earlier. And that placement, so it was a 3-month duration, but I remember I was directly put into a project which was about conducting an evaluation of an anti-corruption program. Now, yes, I studied education and gender and other thematic areas, but anti-corruption, I didn't know a thing about it. So that's when I really found myself at a difficult point, because I it was a learning curve basically, and it required a lot of on-the-job learning. So I think at the stage that you're all in right now, you have to be open about the fact that you won't have all the answers right now, and there will be things that you will learn on the job, and that's completely okay. And that is also to say that you need to find the right employers for you, or the mentors who can really guide you in that process. So yeah, during my placement then, when I was studying about anti-corruption, then I was also helping build an evaluation framework. So I don't know how many of you actually have taken impact evaluation courses or courses related to that, but there is something called an OECD DEC criteria that is used to evaluate projects. So yes, I had studied about that in my evaluation course that I took during my time at UEA, but I hadn't really applied it directly. So I didn't know what exactly the criteria of relevance, for example, included, or what effectiveness meant in the context of a specific development challenge of anti-corruption, for example. So that's when I really worked together with the director, Jonathan Ryder, who really guided me on how to do this properly, or how to understand a project's effectiveness. What are outcomes versus what are outputs, versus what is high-level goal, and how these things are different in a theory of change, let's say. So yeah, maybe I'm just talking too much here, but just it's like thinking out loud as well about my experience. I think that it's been a journey, and what I learned at UEA was how to approach problems systematically. I think this is a skill that is very much essential for monitoring and evaluation. So whether you're thinking about, let's say, breaking down a program's theory of change, or if it's designing, let's say, an evaluation framework, or even if it's anything along even if it's other things of that sort, I think that ability to be able to approach problems systematically is very much invaluable. It's something that will be very useful. Right. I think in terms of some of the challenges I've faced so far in my journey, I would say that one of the biggest ones have been bridging this gap between theory and practice. So in consulting, what happens is that you quickly realize that not everything will fit neatly into a textbook framework. So obviously in academia, we are taught concepts and theories, and okay, well, this theorist says this about how to approach assessment of impact, or how to understand outcomes. But when you work on complex evaluations of anti-corruption program, for example, you don't know what the stakeholder ecosystem is like. You don't know how complex it is. You don't know if or what the impact would even look like. Impact in itself could potentially look like, it could be, let's say, a change in an attitude, for example, or a change in a behavior. It could very much vary across the line. So we also need to understand in M&E something that is different from what we are taught in academia is clients often operate in environments of uncertainty and limited resources. So what we have to do then is try to sort of balance the scientific rigor with pragmatism as well. So we need to be observant of what the clients require from us in consulting. And then, of course, I think this one all of you will relate to, or maybe not. But another challenge was managing imposter syndrome in the very early days. Even I had my days when I was like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not getting this. Maybe I'm spending way too much time on an evaluation criterion, and I just don't know what impact means, or I don't know what efficiency, operational efficiency means. But oftentimes what happens is that consulting also involves working with very senior stakeholders. I'll give an example. So Recently, I worked on a project for the African Development Bank. Now, this is in fact my first ever evaluation with a bank, like a global bank, something similar to the World Bank. So obviously, the idea of interacting with representatives from the bank really frightened me. But I think it naturally takes time to build the confidence. And I'm not going to say that, oh, just get over the imposter syndrome. No, it's quite natural. All of us go through that phase. And it's kind of also, I think, good in a way, because that only helps you improve your ways, and it helps you improve and do better. Like let's say read a bit more about what the African Bank is all about, or what the anti-corruption program is all about. I think it gives you that space to even explore things a bit more in detail. So yeah, so that's, of course, that was one of the biggest challenges. And then I think the last one that I would like to mention is managing competing priorities. Now, of course, we see that in academia as well, with the juggling of the deadlines, etc. This is something that I think we naturally take with us in our careers after academia. So consulting particularly requires juggling multiple projects. And with my current role, I have been managing 3 projects at one time. And what usually happens is that I'm working across different geographies as well. So recently I was working for a project which is based in Myanmar, and I was in the UK. So that also includes sometimes juggling different time zones even, which is like a 7 to 8 hour time difference, for example. So these things will happen. But I think it's good to be aware of these things right now to kind of see if consulting, in fact, is for you as a career. Because ultimately you will need strong organizational skills. And of course, I think at the very basic level, you will require a willingness to ask for help when needed. And don't ever feel that it is embarrassing to do that, because everyone out here will certainly help you, and they are very much aware that you're only starting. So yeah, just asking for help really really makes things a lot easier. So yeah, I think these are some of the general observations that I had put down for me to talk through. But yeah, I don't know, Helen, maybe I should pause there and give you the floor if you have any specific questions. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Asra. Does anybody have any questions that they want to either come on the microphone or let me have a look at the chat?
So, Asra, it's really interesting to hear your tips there. I'm a careers advisor aligned to global development, and yesterday we ran a session on overcoming imposter syndrome. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. You talked about overcoming it, and so if you had to summarize how you overcame it, I think I heard you say, accept that it's part of the job role. Don't be afraid to ask for help. One of the things someone who was working as a consultant once said to me is you can't know everything all of the time. So I think curious questioning, and actually clients and stakeholders respond to this quite well. Instead of going, what does that mean? Oh, that's very interesting. So how does that work in practice? It's quite a good way to cover that you don't know. And then you can bring perspectives they hadn't thought of. What have I collected all your tips there, or were there any others you'd particularly give for overcoming imposter syndrome?
I feel like you answered the question perfectly yourself, but yeah, that's exactly it. I remember when I conducted one of my first interviews for the anti-corruption evaluation program that I mentioned about, I told my director that I'm actually quite nervous to do this on my own. He wanted to push me to the deep end, and he told me that you need to lead this on your own. And at that time, I also didn't want to say no, because I just wanted to leave a good impression, to be very honest. So he told me that it's okay. It's okay for you to ask dumb questions, basically. And you don't need to even frame them that way. Just exactly how you said, Sophie. asking for clarity, for example, or acknowledging that you know little about a topic. And that's quite natural. Not everybody knows everything. And in this particular field, especially, I would say. But yeah, I think asking for help is a big one as well. And then also, like you said, naturally accepting that this will in fact take its time and you need to trust your expertise. Now, of course, you're not coming out of UEA without any skills. You know your stuff. So trust yourself, and know that you know the ways to get through. I know it's easier said in abstract, but trust me, there will come a point when you will be confident, let's say, in leading the interview on your own or leading a case study. So only last year, I know for a fact that I couldn't do a lot of things on my own. But it's just that the more your mentors or your directors, for example, if you're working in a consulting firm, the more they push you, the more you have no choice but to learn those skills. The more you escape from that situation, the more, like, I think the harder it will get for you. So just be there. Don't try to run away. And yeah, it will come to you. I know it sounds stupid, but I think that's exactly how it has helped me. And then also one thing I would like to mention, that from obviously a lot of classes that you're taking right now, and then I took, let's say, a couple of years ago, I learned about resources that I can use to improve my knowledge about a lot of things. So I know that better evaluation, for example, that particular website is so incredibly useful about, for example, learning about new methods or how to improve, let's say, your interview techniques. I think there are a lot of resources out there as well that you can access to integrate into your practice. But I think, like I said again, you won't learn it if you won't do it. So you have to let yourself be there, basically. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you.
I had a question, Asra. You mentioned, typically juggling several projects at the same time, and quite possibly in several different time zones. I wondered, is there a typical day at work?
So a short answer, no. My days are highly varied, and it's interesting because in consulting, you're also the one who sometimes write the proposals for those projects. And in consulting, a lot of your work is very much dependent on how much your firm wins the projects as well. So that's why you wouldn't know exactly what you're working on one day compared to another. But what I've seen typically is, well, first thing you do is, of course, check your emails. And then typically what I do is then make a to-do list of all the things that I need to get through that day. So today, for example, I worked on a proposal for the British Council. So that took me almost like all 8 hours of my time. And then I also had to address some comments on a report that we got feedback on from a client. So sometimes things come your way depending on deadlines and timelines of the clients as well. So yeah, so there's basically no day is the same. So I've had different days where I've also had, for example, interviews for one project and then report writing for another on the same day, especially when I'm assigned more than one projects, and that does happen. I think the most I have done are like 3 projects at the same time. But for me, I think what also matters is delivering the quality that we have promised to the client. So I make it a rule of not taking more than that. But I think generally what I would also say is, again, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and then the more efficient you become. If you have the right systems in place, and that system, let's say, could mean a time tracker, for example, or a template for a report. A system could also mean a template for a proposal that you will write, a template for a budget that you will develop, a template for a visual that you will create for your report. So if you have these pre-developed systems in place, those really help you. I don't know if I answered your question, Helen, but
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is
there's a very strong sense there that there's a huge amount of variety,
yeah,
which I imagine is really kind of interesting and stimulating, but that comes with a degree of uncertainty. You know, I mean, I
yeah.
pretty much know what I'm doing from now until the end of May. I'm guessing you don't.
Exactly. Yeah, I think yeah, it can be great as well at the same time. The uncertainty could also be very positive. Because like I always keep saying to myself, like if you're working on two different projects, like you're literally jumping across different themes. So one day you're working on gender and youth, and on another day you're working on employment, for example. So yeah, I kind of like the variety of it. And that also, I just want to add one point there as well, that what then consulting, particularly in M&E, would then require is just being able to be adaptive and adaptable to what's coming your way. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to say. Yeah.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. The first one from Leia Phoenix, it looks like. Very, very pragmatic question here. My question is, does Aleph accept internship beyond the summer term, for example, for instance, after your course term? So I'm guessing that's after the end of the degree. And more broadly, does Aleph have internships?
So I think from my knowledge, we are going to be, I think, working with UEA for a placement project. But I think internships in particular, this is something that I actually need to confirm, but I will certainly come back to you when I confirm it with my directors, if that's okay. I'm happy to write it to you, Helen, and then we can hopefully convey that.
My understanding is that quite often Aleph will actually hire consultants for a particular project.
Yeah.
So you get a project, you win a bid, you say, okay, we need consultants on, you know, youth in Nigeria or you know, democracy in, you know, whatever, and then you put out the request for, and it's not an internship, it's a consultant's job. Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly that. Usually, so even when we're building a team, let's say for a potential evaluation or even a formative research piece, sometimes we also include junior analysts or researchers as well. The team is often a mix of some research analyst level positions and then some, let's say, expert consultants level positions. And then we have the director as well. So it really depends on project to project. So yeah, I think we do open a lot of like short-term consultancy or project-based consultancies, but internship, I think this is something that I need to double check. Yeah.
And then a question from Alex. For somebody without a master's degree, what is the first step to get into a consulting role, or is a master's degree required?
That's quite interesting. Oh, and a difficult one as well. So I think what I've seen from my experience, and as much as I've seen that a lot of the consultancy roles now even require a PhD. However, I think what we try to do at Aleph is that we encourage applications from potential candidates who can at least let's say present a wide range of experience. So it's either an academic qualification or something that shows us a bit more about your experience in general. So yes, a master's.
Sorry, it would be the kind of expertise that comes from lived experience, from having been a practitioner in that area.
Exactly that. And then it doesn't have to be an expert level experience. It could even be just a volunteer role, for example, let's say in a in a region away from yours, for example, in a thematic area or like a development challenge that is commonly known, for example, or let's say having other capabilities like skills proficiency language proficiency, for example. These are all things that could be in fact used to present yourself as a candidate if a master's is not a possibility. But yeah, I think in terms of experience, generally, that is something that needs to make up for the lack of a master's degree, for example.
I was going to add a comment in response to Alex's question. It is a really good question, and we get it every time we have these types of events in Dev. Obviously, a master's will give you a lot more knowledge and confidence and research skills, but other routes in are, as I mentioned, the research assistant role there. So if you've got your research skills, quite a lot of organizations will want you to have qualitative and a bit of quantitative. They've got experts in quantitative if it's not your kind of real passion, but just enough to be able to work with the numbers a little bit. So I don't know if that rings true with Asra. And the other route is the private, the big commercial consultancies have graduate routes in. It may not sit right with your kind of values depending on the organization, but it is a route in to gain training and then move into the development sector. So I don't know if that's what you've seen, Asra, in terms of entry routes.
Absolutely. I have in fact seen a lot of research focused graduate schemes from companies like Ipsos, for example, or there's a couple of others as well. But yeah, definitely. I think particularly, I would say in M&E, having research experience is certainly like a foundation. That's like a requisite foundation, I would say. And that's something that you need to present. And I would also suggest that something that I've also found useful is to just learn or self-learn in one way or the other softwares. So research softwares, analysis softwares. So that could be quantitative, R, SPSS, etc., or that could also include qualitative, NVivo, and the likes. So just knowing your way around those softwares can really position you as a better candidate, for example, especially in the case if one doesn't have a master's degree.
I just want to confirm one of my own biases here. When I'm advising students either in the DWP or the dissertation, one of the things that I really push is for people, if at all possible, to do a research design and collect primary data. So, you know, they run some interviews, they run a focus group discussion, they run a survey, they collect documentation, you know, but one of the things that I've been really trying to push with students is downloading some secondary data and analysing it is a useful skill. But actually setting up a community focus group discussion and then getting ethical clearance and then designing the schedule for questions and then transcribing it and coding it and all the rest of it. Is it fair to say, and there is a correct answer to this, that actually the experience of primary data collection is something that you look for?
Absolutely.
Well done.
I am with you on this. I'm completely with you on this. Yeah, no, definitely. I think because even the idea about organizing a research yourself, I think it really shows several skills that are very much useful or valuable in a consulting career, particularly in M&E. The biggest one being your ability to organize things independently. One of the things that we get told a lot in this sector is the self-starter attitude. It's just not a word. It is something that is very, very crucial. And then also stakeholder engagement. So that includes your engagement with potentially the project participants that you're talking to, or even high-level stakeholders. That's how you become comfortable in arranging meetings with them, That's always your starting point. So yes, I am, I join you in your bias.
Excellent. Thank you. Nothing like a bit of advice, with confirmation of bias.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you for your talk. I just wanted to ask the question about your work placement, because I am doing the work placement, and then you said that that's how you figured out that this is what I want to do, and that's exactly what I want from my work placement. So I wonder that other than your task, that you were going to do this work placement, are there anything that helps you that realize that this is what I want to do? For example, like you interview the people or like chat with the coworkers, or did you do anything like further to help you decide your way during your work placement?
Great question. Thank you so much for it. Yes, so I think just the idea of me being given responsibility. So I know it sounds very obvious, but just me being told that, okay, Asra, you're responsible to develop these 2 case studies from Mexico and let's say the Philippines. Yeah. Now, of course, I don't know anything about that context, but just my just curiosity of what's happening in Mexico, let's say hypothetically regarding anti-corruption. Just me spending, let's say, a few hours on that very specific thing really made me feel like it's amazing to be able to learn about a specific topic in a very specific context. And I think you do that very, very frequently in monitoring and evaluation. When you're evaluating projects, you could be evaluating a project you know absolutely nothing about. And I think this was the point where I was like, okay, if this is what I will get to do every single day, the variety of the topics that I'm dealing with, and potentially the confidence that my directors, let's say, have in me, and then just my willingness to just sit there in one corner and like really focus myself in within the context of, let's say, Mexico. I think that in itself is like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to keep doing. Let's say if I would be happy to, let's say, learn about the refugee and host communities in Uganda. I would be happy to learn about gender inclusion in Myanmar, for example. I would be happy to learn about, let's say, employment programs in Nigeria, for example. So I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, just the variety of topics and independently doing things, even if it's like developing a case study, leading interviews, for example, that was like, okay, now this is the kind of impact I can help create, because ultimately then that research is used to inform recommendations for that specific program. So it's not something that is perhaps directly happening, but there's of course potential to contribute to that impact in the long run. So for me, that was my motivation. Yeah, I don't know if that helped answer your question.
I guess I can at least try to find where's my motivation in my work placement.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think for that, you also have to keep trying difficult things. I think you wouldn't know what you really what I think what's the right word? What's the fire? That's the the way they say it. What is it that really brings you to your desk every single morning? I think that's what you need to find. And yeah, it might be sometimes, and I have to be appreciative of the fact that it's possible that it might take you some time to find that. But I think the key really is to be consistent and to keep putting yourselves in situations that are initially uncomfortable, that you're initially not confident about. But ultimately, I think one of the things that I've also learned from this sector is everybody here wants to help you. And I think the networking aspect of this sector is really, really, I think, incredible. So make sure that you also network with the right people and learn from them in one way or the other. I think that will really help you find what your leaning is in terms of career. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm looking for my work placement. Thank you.
Brilliant. Good luck.
Thank
I think
you.
also in your case, Riho, because you're doing project design and management, as you go through the semester, you'll have the opportunity to experience lots of different project roles. You know,
Yeah.
so you can work on the monitoring and evaluation framework, but you might also work on the budgeting. You might also work on the context and evidence reviews. You'll definitely work on the theory of change, you know, so you'll
Yeah.
get the opportunity through the project design and management module, you know, to see what are the different roles within, you know, effectively consulting on a, you know, on a project. Thank you so much. I think we've got a little bit more time, so I'm just going to check. Alex asks, monitoring and evaluation was mentioned and sounds very interesting. How did you know this was the type of consulting for you?
Oh, wow. I love that question. And I feel like mostly what I've said so far probably answers that, but allow me to just put it in this way. I think it's really about impact for me. Impact, and then the ability to go out there and just generally have conversations with people. I got a wonderful opportunity to do that in during my fieldwork in Uganda, for example. And that really included sitting with youth from refugee and host communities. And I was basically asking them, what is it that you want to achieve in life? Now, it's a very simple question. It is just me trying to have a very, very friendly, normal conversation. That wasn't meant to be an interview, but just the opportunity to be able to do these things, to have these conversations in a context that is very new to you, but you know that there will be a lot you can find there. I think that in itself really excited me. I think that was very, very interesting for me to be able to do that, have those conversations, and really identify and co-create strategies for youth programming. So yeah, I think that was one of the things that really reinforced the idea for me that this is what I want. And I think, again, one of the things that I said a bit earlier as well, just the variety of things you get to do in M&E. No day is the same, no project is the same. It may be a youth, let's say a youth development program or a youth skillings program, but the way, let's say, it happens in, let's say, Bangladesh, compared to the way it might happen in Mexico or any other country is very, very different. And just being able to learn on how impact is achieved in two different contexts, I think that is really exciting, just to understand the complexities of different environments, and how there are certain internal or external factors that can contribute to the success of a specific project in two different contexts. I think that is quite interesting. It's something that really makes me even more curious about development in general. Yeah, I think so. These are some of the things that really just told me, okay, this is for you. And I think one of the things that I must mention, I'm probably painting a very, very positive picture about consulting in M&E, but I should also mention that M&E and specifically consulting, I think it requires a lot of juggling of a lot of things. I think it can be very demanding. It requires independent work. It requires that sort of self-starter attitude. It requires trusting your instinct. It requires trusting your judgment about a project. And it's sometimes I do second guess myself as well. I'm still learning. But I think, yeah, there are a lot of things that might not also sound great, but at the end of the day, if you get the opportunity to just learn about communities, spend time with them, and perhaps in one way or the other contribute to impact in general. I think that really counts, I would say. Yeah.
The impression I'm getting, Asra, is that, since you started, you've developed a really deep expertise in monitoring and evaluation. You described Aleph earlier as generalists, and what you've done is you've developed a skill set in monitoring and evaluation, which you're now able to apply regionally, whether it's in Uganda, Mexico, Bangladesh, wherever, but also in terms of, employment, gender, democratization, and so on. So the picture I'm building up is that you've got that kind of skill set, that you've got that framework that you're then able to apply in different regions and different sectors of development. And is that for consultants, that they develop a skill set? And it might not be monitoring evaluation, it might be budgeting and value for money, or it might be policy development or something like that. And then once they've got that skill set, they then look at applying it kind of regionally into different sectors.
Absolutely agree with you. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think just giving my M&E example again, focusing on M&E, focused on research skills, focused on knowledge about evaluation theories, particularly theory-based approaches, learned about methods like contribution analysis, outcome harvesting, particularly when you do qualitative evaluation. Of course, the more experimental methods are quite different, but just generally knowing the blueprint of these methods have really helped me just apply them in different contexts, settings, thematic areas, etc. But also, this isn't the only skill, of course. There are a lot of skills you can learn about. And I think, just like you said, PDM, in fact, the course in itself gives you or shows you all those skills that you can learn. And I think so you don't even have to be an evaluator. You can just be a researcher, a research consultant, for example, who does context analyses, who does political economy analyses, for example, or who does GESI analyses, for example, or you could do, for example, budgeting, like you said, or you could also do there are just a lot of skills out there that you can apply. There's also procurement, for example. I think procurement is a big one in the development sector. And then there is quality assurance. And I think there's also programming in itself as well. So you could work from the program side as well. I think that's a big one. Just find I know it sounds very easy. I know it's not. But yeah, the more you experiment with things, I think the more you will come to find what is it that you enjoy the most. Yeah. And I think placements, particularly placements, are the best way to do that. Even if it's a volunteer role, even if it's a short-term role, just try to find one, and then try to challenge yourself and find your niche. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Yeah, I remember working with people called logisticians.
Yeah,
and what they did was, kind of move equipment around and, have buildings that were set up for, delivering projects across different environments and so on.
Yeah.
Just amazing stuff. Brilliant. Okay. I think possibly one more question from me, and obviously do type in the chat bar if there's anything else. Do you have a favorite memorable project, or a favorite, memorable partnership, or, was there a thing that you worked on that was a standout for you?
Yeah, I think I probably already mentioned it, but it was actually my first fieldwork experience to Africa. It was Uganda, and beautiful country, lovely people. My role was that of a project manager. That was in fact one of my first project manager roles after my switch from research analyst. And I was told by my director, So initially, there were no plans of me going to the country for fieldwork because we had, in fact, taken on board an expert from Uganda to lead the data collection. I think typically that's what we do to make sure that information is contextualized, etc. But I got lucky, and then I got the opportunity to visit the country and represent Aleph Strategies. So that was a challenge on its own, but I think that was my chance to just be there deep on the ground, because there's only so much you can learn from a screen. And I have to also mention here, Aleph, a lot of our work is primarily remote, and it's like you're not really, yes, you do a lot of remote KIIs, you do even remote FGDs, you even do remote workshops, but just the feeling of sitting across the table from your partners or from your informants, for example, just really adds a lot of nuances and a lot more insight and depth to your conversation just right there, over there. And I got a wonderful opportunity to lead a stakeholder consultation workshop with various refugee-led organizations from that particular context. And it was amazing to hear directly from them the challenges that host and refugee youth were facing, and using those insights then to translate them into specific tangible recommendations to the partner who was also present there. So it was like all the stakeholders were present there, and it was just so much easier for me to capture the essence of what was required for the project. So I think that's certainly one of my very fond memories from my engagement with Aleph so far. And I think this only goes on to say that I know that it might not be possible for everybody, but if a fieldwork opportunity comes to you in any way at all, do consider availing it, because I think that really is something that you can, you know, how we were discussing about when you don't have a master's, I think that's the kind of experience that really helps you get into M&E consulting, or even any M&E role that you are looking to apply to. So yeah, I think for me, that was one of my really, I would say, high points. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think I'm right in saying, Asra, that you're happy to share your LinkedIn if any of the students in the session want to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Of course, I'm just going to find my link very quickly. I am quite active there, so I would be happy to arrange even one-on-one calls. I think this is something that I want to actively integrate this year, is to have conversations with people. And
also Aleph does a lot of their recruiting,
hiring exactly.
directly on LinkedIn as well, I've noticed.
Yeah, let me also share the link, Aleph's page as well, if that's also of use or potentially any help.
So if you're interested, students in the session, then you can follow the Aleph page. And it's an interesting one to follow, because as a for-profit consultancy, you know, what they do is slightly different, you know, from non-profits and you know, the ways that other you know, NGOs work. It's interesting, you know, sort of seeing their strategies on their LinkedIn page. Okay, so do feel free to reach out to Asra on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Asra. That was absolutely fascinating, and I think just a really great example of how you can directly take the skills that you've learned from your degree and on your work placement, and, you know, very, very kind of directly convert those into employability. In your case, you know, a permanent job. So I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. But, you know, I think everybody else in the room, you know, as you're going through your degree, you know, think very strategically in terms of, you know, what are the skills that I'm getting here? You know, those are going to go into your CV. They're going to go into your application letter. you can very, very directly translate, skills, knowledge, frameworks that you've learned on your degree courses into employability. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Helen. There's just one last thing that I would like to mention as well. It just came to my mind as you were kindly mentioning all these things. And I think there's absolutely no harm in starting small. Often people, what they dream of is working for these massive INGOs like Mercy Corps, Danish Refugee Council, or CARE, Oxfam, etc., or even the UN agencies, right? That was also my goal. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go into UN, but you can start small, and that's where you are given a lot more responsibility compared to those massive organizations. You are put under pressure, but I think it's only in the best way possible. And I think if you leverage that, then ultimately you can also go to those bigger organizations if that's what you prioritize in your career. But yeah, don't be afraid of sort of starting small. And one thing that I would again and again and again emphasize is networking. Networking. That's the big one. That's the biggest one. I think one thing that I actively also try to do myself is network on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn should be your best friend. A lot of things are out there. Join the right groups. There are a lot of LinkedIn groups with development jobs, opportunities. There are many specific groups as well. They post a lot of resources as well. So yeah, find those. I'm happy to share them with you as well when you reach out to me on LinkedIn. And yeah, just reach out to me. I would be happy to have a one-on-one with you, with whoever would be interested.
There's also a UEA alumnus group that's well worth joining.
Yes, exactly that.
Lots of very valuable contacts in there. And Leah is asking about how to contact you. I think initially if you reach out on LinkedIn, and then obviously, you can take that conversation further if that's going to be helpful for you.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that'll be great.
Okay. Thank you so much, Asra.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, everybody.
1 minute early because we are ruthlessly efficient about our time usage.
That's how we have to be in M&E, yeah. Efficient.
So again, just thank you so much, Asra, and we really hope that you can join us again, for further conversations about employability. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.